All right, shalom, fam, shalom. Praying all is well. For those that are following the culture, Purim will be this evening. Evenington rising starts the days. That's how the days go, right? We can see that in Genesis of Barashayat. I was in there ready to sit down and hear some teaching, but y'all was like, go ahead and drop this real quick and then go back in. But yeah, shalom, fam, yet again. They're going over here to learn a little something about learn not a little something, but learn some more great things what Yah has to say from a teacher, Pastor Kofi, big brother. But I was starting this rising, right, per usual, and yes, we're in another familiar place, back at this same place again. And I love looking at the wilderness because it brings up thoughts, because in the wilderness is where Yah is closest with us. Once we realize these things, the wilderness is not something to be afraid of, but yet a refining process. And as long as he's refining me, he's paying attention to me, so I will fully oblige with that. I was listening to a couple of things this rising as well, scrolling through, and there was a verse that came up. Speaking of learning Yah, so that way you're able to ask what you need, right? Pretty much all together. And learning Yah, and as the voice is getting stronger with Yah, learning to know exactly what it is you need to ask for anyway, so it's not even out the way, right? I got a call this rising as well from my boy, and he was telling me about something that happened at work, at his work or his toil, whatever your preference is. But he was telling me like, hey man, I got into a little incident yesterday. He drives trucks, right? And there was an incident where he was dealing with the driver that had road rage. Pretty much. He was dealing with them up and down the road, and he told me, he was like, man, I was behind him, but he kept slowing me down, kept trying to slow me down. I'll get over, he'll get over, I'll get back over, he'll get back over. I let him pass me, and when he saw me get behind him, he slowed down again. He's like, I'm thinking about traffic, everybody else involved, it's not just us two. And his rage obviously has him at a point where he has lost control. And when you lose control to gain control, control being the most high, that means control was never there in the first place. But my brother is working on himself, praise Yah. And he said, you know, instead of staying behind the guy, I felt the need to get up out of there, right? Because he's now not paying attention to everybody else that could be hurt in the process. He's worried about me. He said, I passed him, I drove past him, and he said the back of my trailer hit his mirror. And I talked to the state troopers. They said that everything was fine. They're not even worried about coming at me about anything. They said the damage, if it was even that, it's under $100, maybe even under $60. But he was just so angry that he called and got him notarized for the whole incident, right? They ran the cameras back, couldn't really see what he did. That was going on behind him, but they could see what happened in front of him, right? So from their innocent viewpoint, they didn't see where the other driver went wrong. They saw what he did. Many times in insurance cases, they'd rather you stay behind somebody or put yourself at risk even more in order to get paid for something or compensated. I said, bro, you still got your job? He said, yeah. He said, well, the state troopers coming at you about your license, about anything? He said, no. I said, brother, it sounds like you're fine. You know, you were worried about everybody else and not just y'all too. Somebody had to do that. Somebody had to be who Yah sends you to be, right? And that prevented a lot of things. Who knows what could have happened? You know, when these trucks get to swerving randomly because how it was, and how they were driving beside each other, the truck driver would have had to swerve to the left, maybe possibly a little bit, to try to overcorrect, and all of a sudden realize that he was kind of just being angry, but at the wrong point. Sometimes it's just too late at that point. And when these trucks get to swerving, the back cargo, that trailer gets lopsided. It doesn't like that. It doesn't like that. It begins to tip, it begins to rock, and it's just held down by this lock-in kingpin from the tractor to the trailer. It's not much, so it's not like there's a rod going all the way back holding things steady. It's just on one little nub, right? And I said, bro, you did exactly what it was that you were supposed to do. You heard Yah. You heard Yah, and your compassion said, I'd rather take the L than to try to deal with this guy and have everybody else in trouble. Because if I slow down and he slows down, I end up hitting the back of him, who knows what could happen from there. And I said, well, bro, this is what the thing is. Like, take that to life. What does that tell you about life? And he dropped something heavy on me, and it was awesome. He said it shows me that, especially with everything going on now, because that seems to be the conversation, so that's something. He's like, man, they rather you stay in a dangerous position instead of getting up out of there. you staying in that position can damage anybody else. Them seeing you still in that position, thinking that that's okay to do, you know. I said, bro, you did the right thing. You did the right thing. You took everybody else out of risk. And like in this walk, and as we get closer with Yah, continue to be that example. Continue not to let things into your ear that doesn't need to, right? They can say what they have to say. It's business. But everybody's okay. Nobody got hurt. If you would have done what they told you to do, apparently this outcome was the right one, and the other one wasn't. Because who knows what could have happened on the other one. This one, it seemed like everybody got away okay. So just take it and just keep going, because the setting that Yah has you in is perfect peace. It's peace. Nobody's hurt. Everybody made it home safely, as far as we know. It's righteous. It's Tabah. I was driving as well as I closed this video out. I was driving as well, and it went along with it. That started even this thinking process. A lot of times when I'm starting off on the road in the risings in the mornings or whatever, I'm going and I'll think about, hey, I want to listen to this, or should I listen to this, or should I listen to the radio or something, da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of times that just means riding in silence. You can't figure out what you want to hear. It's like, hey, I don't want to hear this. I don't think I want to hear that. The radio, some raw stuff might start playing, because you don't want everything in your ear, because Yah is trying to tell you something in those moments. So as we get closer to Yah and knowing what it is that we have to ask for in these times, just dropping it in there real quick, don't feel shameful for not letting certain things into your ear, because look at the outcome of it. Remind ourselves that we're in this system of Babylonian ways, right? A lot of times us doing right is not going to be right for them, obviously. Right? We're doing the right thing. It changes up these things. So be confident and be settled in with that. Settled in with that. And prayerfully the noise wasn't too much during this whole video. I just thought about that as my hands resting on the steering wheel. So hopefully that vibration wasn't coming up into the phone too much. But yeah, Barak Yam fam. As this evening we not only removing the leaven in this season, but also keeping in mind what happened during Purim. So go ahead and dive in on your research. Continue to remove the leaven from your home, and that's any sin, any distraction that's keeping you out of the will of the Most High. Any distraction that's having you thinking about whatever you're doing in the system as you toil or as you work. Making sure that it stays with covenant, right? Everything towards covenant. Whether Yah has you, wherever He has you at preparing for, just know that it's righteous as long as you hear what He tells you to do. And sometimes don't be afraid of getting up out of there, because staying behind certain persons is just going to get you hurt potentially. Aman. Shalom, my Barak fam. I'm gonna go back into fellowshipping and learning some more. But yeah, peace and blessings, fam. Peace and blessings.